Is a fellow member of the Central Virginia Woodturners. I'm also a member there. And Kirk is a professional. He turns. A lot of his work goes to through the Monticello Museum and gift stuff. He does quite a bit of that. He and Fred Williamson, I guess, are kind of the two of the big time doers in
two main monkeys.
The two main monkeys, okay. But I appreciate Kurt. He doesn't do a lot of demos because, frankly, he says it's not worth it. But he did it for us, and I think we are going to be in for a great treat this morning. He's a fine craftsman, a wonderful woodturner, and he's also a friend.
Too much.
Okay, Kurt, we turn it over to you.
All right. Do a quick talk about what we're going to do. We're going to do cowboy hats today. There isn't much difference between the cowboy hats and a baseball hat. You can basically turn the same thing, same idea and stuff. For you beginners, you start with just a log, cut it in half. You want to mount from this side so you have your widest piece for your brim. People do turn them either way. I mean, I've seen people mount them either way. Me, I just mount them with a solid connection here and turn it with the brim out here, turn it all in one move. Some people will flip it, turn a piece on the end and put it in a chuck and do it that way. Whichever way you want. So, and you can start small, practice with the little ones first. Kids love those. This one was actually turned real thick and then carved. It's much heavier than the others. This is one actually where it shows and stuff like that. But I mean, you start with, this is a little smaller piece of wood is all I could come up with that was nice and fresh. But you can start with a 125-pound block of wood and you end up with ounces and a half.
Oh, wow.
So lots of shavings, basically. If you want, you can actually stop and you can core a bowl out of the middle of it. Working with the Monticello wood, I do a lot of coring, so we don't want to waste any wood.
Yeah.
Quick background on me. I mean, I was a mechanic all my life. Owned a business for 30 years, sold it, semi-retired, trying to decide what I was going to do next. And Fred Williamson called me and said, "Would you like to turn some bowls for Monticello?" I've been turning maybe 4 or 5 years. And I said, "Oh, of course, I'll put my name on the bottom of something from Monticello." So we got into it and started turning a few bowls for them. And they put an ad in the paper, and they wanted bowls about every 3 days at that point. We couldn't even begin to keep up with them. So the first two of Poplar Tree, I think I've turned 900 and some pieces out of.
Oh.
And I do chest sets, so a chest set I consider one piece. That's the way I number them. So a lot of pieces. I don't count all the bottle stoppers and things like that. I do 200 or 300 letter openers, probably 500-600 bottle stoppers a year. It's got to be a job. I don't get to play and have fun anymore very often. I haven't done hats in a long time, so I practiced a couple of them real quick, just to see if I can still do one. This one was wind checked pretty bad. Not a very safe piece. If you're going to do a hat, get something that doesn't have cracks and stuff like that in it. Nice and green is good. It makes it easier to bend it when you're done. Y'all can actually have this one if you want. You can raffle it off or something if somebody wants to glue it up and piece it back together. There's different ways to do bands and stuff on them. This one I'm still looking for a good rattlesnake to put on there. I'm probably in the right place, aren't I? But you can do, all kinds of things. You can burn and rim on it, edge, whatever you want to do. That's just all decoration after you're done. Can you fit the hat to your head? Sure you can. Automotive guy, this is what you measure wheels with. This came from my shop. So you take 2 measurements on your head, the side and that. Most people are different. Some people have a perfectly round head, which makes it really easy. So you take the 2 measurements, you split it in half. If it's a 6 and a 7, you're thinking 6 and a half. You're going to have a little shrinkage with the wood, so maybe add another, 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch to it. So as it shrinks down, it'll fit good. And you can measure any way you want. That's just my quick, simple tool, but you can make these wooden calipers and things like that, so you can take a measurement there real quick and just run a tape across it, whatever. Just a way to get the size of your head.
Well, some of these people's head swells after a while.
Mine might before the day's over.
Yeah.
I actually turned one, I call it my Hoss Cartwright hat. I mean, that thing was huge, big thing. Must have been about an 8.5. And I was at a show, I think I was doing the Crozet show, and some guy came in, I mean big-headed guy, and I mean it fit him perfect. He just had to have that hat.
Yeah.
So he walked away with it. And then, of course, after we're done with the hat, if you've got it nice and green and stuff, this is a simple jig. And there's different ways to do these too. But you basically sit the cowboy hat down in the jig like that. Pack it in. You can tighten up. And the reason I do this type, I've got others that have nuts on them, things like that. This basically about as tight as I can get it by hand is about all you want to put on it. You can over tighten it and actually crack it.
Yeah.
So take it slow, come back every half a day, every day, snug it down a little more. And I think I've got a good, we're almost 8 inches that way and 7 that way. So it's turned an inch difference.
Yeah.
Charlie, take a picture of that.
To pull these rims over, use rubber bands. Just wrap rubber bands over, hook them on. You can put, you know, the more it wants to give, the more rubber bands you can put on it. But there again, you can overstress it and crack it that way too. So don't push it, just put them on there, let it do its thing. You can come and spray it with some more water if it starts to dry out too much. And it takes, you know, several days to a week to get that thing to come down the way you want it. I've got a couple more pieces. I'm not sure where. So you want this down. If you want to curl the front and back up, I made these simple things. You can make them out. I've got them out of wood too. You put them on there. Just pull rubber bands between them, and it'll start to pull your tips up too. So you can play with the hat all kinds of ways. You can pull them down if you wanted. You can pull them up. You can shape the hat in all kinds of different ways. And just get the big old bag of rubber bands, all different sizes and things like that. Some of them curl really good. You can see the one side curled more on this one than it did the other.
Yeah.
So I probably should have stopped and played with it and put rubber bands just over one side and stuff like that. But it's been a lot of years since I've done cowboy hats. I haven't had great luck selling them around here. Sold a few, but you know, there's people in Texas that as fast as they can make them, they're gone. You know, you got to be in the right place. But I'm thinking maybe what we're doing today is ash tree from UVA lawn next to Brooks Hall. So I'll have to go see the polo team, I guess, at UVA and see if I can get rid of these. And I did a quick rough up just to get it smoothed out a little bit, so we wouldn't have to go through. Y'all wouldn't have to see me suffer through the hard part.
Yeah.
All the safety stuff, I have to protect what little hair I have left, so I wear a headpiece. I wear gloves, and doing the amount of turning I do, I mean, sometimes I'll turn 6 and 7 days a week, 6-8 hours a day sometimes, so a lot of stress on the hands and the elbows and all that kind of stuff. I've got little arthritis in the hands from all the mechanicking, and trigger finger, I get cortisone shots and all that stuff. So I've gone to the rubber glove, gives you a nice easy grip. You don't have to grip so hard. Add rubber to my tools, so you got a good soft easy grip. The less you have the grip, the better. And I guess we'll get started on this thing and see what we can do with it. Slow speed, obviously. Your low gear on your lathe and stuff to get started. You're going to have to rough it down. A couple of things I've learned when you're shaping it all. So you want to do a little curl on the brim. You can see the curl there. Would you like me to be somewhere else for the camera? Little curl there. You don't want to go straight up and down here. You can see I did a little too straight on that one, my practice one. Been a long time. But if you get a good roll around this corner, makes it fit your head better. They slide on easier. They actually sell pieces to put inside these to make it fit your head better. You can put them wherever they need placing in the hat.
Yeah.
Johansson Mikkelsen, and I don't know, I'll botch his name up, but the guy that he does cowboy hats all the time and stuff. He sells on his website. He sells pieces that you can put in the hats to help fit them to your head a little bit. But I say, if you get the measurements, you're going to come pretty close, and you might have to turn 2 or 3 to fit yours perfect. But you can do it. It's nothing much different than turning a bowl. You think about the shape and stuff like that, you're just basically turning the shape of a bowl. We're going to hollow it out. We're going to do all that stuff. I'll tell you about some of my other tools that I've made for the hollowing part that work pretty good, but let's get the outside shaped down a little bit. The height of the top of the hat and things like that, you know, you can obviously see that one's a lot taller than that one. You can change that. It's just a personal preference thing, whatever you want. I would say an average is 4 to 5 inches. Once you've got your inside measurement, if you have to think about your outside measurement, you're going to add, you know, you really want the hat to be turned definitely less than 1/8 of an inch. I mean, you want to go as thin as you feel comfortable going. The thinner you go, the easier it is to roll. So you have to think about the outside. You just add 1/8 of an inch to the outside. That's going to give you a 1/16 of an inch inside diameter on the thing. So that's how you can try and figure the outside you want. I'm not going to do a whole lot of measuring and stuff today, so we can try and get it done and make it look like something.
So that piece of wood is from Charlottesville, from the campus?
Yeah, this is from the UVA campus.
Yeah.
I use a lot of one-way tools, bowl gouge. I don't use a lot of different things. I mean, I'll turn a whole piece with just a bowl gouge. I don't do the whole rack of different tools. I have several different size bowl gouges and stuff like that, but I love a bowl gouge. And the quick removals, I've got different cuts on them. I do about a 40-degree angle on most of my work. I've got a 60-degree 1/2 inch that I use across the bottom of stuff. It really makes it easier when you're going across the bottom. A lot of it has to do, if you're just beginning, what you feel comfortable with. The deeper the cut, I mean, you go to a 35-degree, you're going to get a lot of catches. It's really aggressive. It's not going to hold an edge real long. So if you're just starting out and you want to feel more comfortable, you go with a 55-degree angle on a bowl gouge. Will give you a much safer, easier. You're not going to cut quite as fast, but it'll be safer. So you can play with that. It's personal preference. I've never had any classes on wood turning, you know, other than Fred Williamson and people like that helping me out with little things. I don't do everything probably the perfect way to do it. I do what's comfortable to me. And, you know, a lot of it has to do with the way you learn. So, it takes repetition. I do plenty of that. So we'll start off. This is a Hansen tool. This is what I use usually to rough things down. It's a big 3/4 inch. A lot of handle. Makes it real easy on your hands and stuff. You don't get so much vibration. This is looking pretty good, so we'll get a little bit of the shape going, get down towards our brim here. Like I say, we're going to want to put a little angle on this and then fade it into our cut there. And I'll go back and forth some as I work on it to get that brim nice and thin. So let's take a little meat off and make a mess.
Yeah.
And I do wear these 2.5 glasses, so I can see really good up close. So if you raise your hand, I'm not going to see you. You're going to have to yell at me. I can't see anything far away, but these, I don't need 2.5s. I like them because I can see little fine cracks when I'm sanding. I had my youngest son helping me out one day sanding, and he was sanding stuff, and he goes, "How's that, Dad?" And I'd look at it, "That's not good enough." I'm like, "Come on, Dad, you're getting too picky." I said, "Hey, I got the good glasses on. I can see them, so make it perfect." All right, let's get going. We're not going to go too fast there. get, obviously you're cutting off the front corner. You want to push it into the corner of your cut. Get it into the corner you're cutting in. You can go either direction with that. Same thing. You come around this way. Get it in the corner. If you get the angle right, it goes through pretty easy. The best thing I was ever taught was a teeny little tweak of your wrist. If it's beating you up, if it's kicking around, things like that, tweak your wrist. Just a little bit and you'll see a difference. When it all of a sudden it'll just take off. And then you know you've got it right. Back of the tool's always on my hip. Holds all the vibration and stuff. It helps me control it better. My front hand, I tend to put this way down on it because I do a lot of big stuff. If you're finessing something, a lot of people want to run their finger along like that. I do a lot of big stuff, so I'm usually clamping down pretty good on it. Hear that little catch in the middle, slow it down a little bit. I had the back end down too low, I was getting lazy. As soon as I brought it up, it took off and cut good. Hold down screws. I use metal screws, hex head. I did Phillips years ago and I kept wringing them out and had to drill them out and all that kind of stuff, so I went to the hex head, metal screws. Very seldom round one off. They don't snap off or anything like that. They hold up really well. These are 1.5 inches long, and there's at least 10 in there. You can never have too much grip back here. You can have too little, but you can never have too much. Come out and work on my brim out here a little bit, make sure I get the shape of that before I take too much off back here.
Hey Kurt,
Yes.
when you were saying about the screws, do you put yours at a dovetail angle? Like I was watching Fred's tapes.
These are supposedly drilled at 10 degrees.
Okay.
I have some that are straight, some that are angled. I don't think that matters a whole lot. It just makes it easier to have the little angle in to get your tool in there to tighten them.
Okay.
Is the reasoning mostly for that. I have, when you have them straight in, you can actually angle them different directions if you want. But I mean, when you've got this many, and I'm, with the plate there, I'm 1 inch to 1.1 inches into the wood.
Yeah.
So that's more than enough to hold it. If you're turning a 20-some inch piece, you're going to want all of that.
Yeah.
You want all you can have, so. Got a pencil back? So let's get a quick idea of the size we're going to go here. What did I say my head was? Everybody got the same size head? Nah. We'll go, let's see, if we do a 7-inch, that'll give us, we'll do about, that'd be a small hat. We'll start out here at 8. start at 8 because I'm going to give it some angle there too. So. And I'm not going to use this big gouge much. That's just a roughing gouge. It doesn't finesse cut very well when you're trying to get a finished cut. The smaller the gouge, the better. Most of my finished cuts are done with this little bitty guy. The only problem with the small one is you got to be really close to the wood. You're going to get more chatter, more vibration. You can't come very far off with a tool this small. So if you can get really close, it's going to give you a better cut because the metal's actually thinner. The thinner the metal, the better the cut. I sharpen all my tools on a CBN wheel, and it's set up much like that. The angle and everything's there, so I walk. It just takes a second. You walk over, zoom, zoom, you're done. That's all the metal I take off. A lot of people sharpen by hand. I think they waste a lot more metal that way. You know, you can do it. I can do it by hand, but I tend to work it a lot more and I use more metal. The way I've got it set up, it's a perfect every time. So I always have the same cut, finish, everything on it. I like to get up about 800 RPM if you can. My lathe has hundreds of pounds of tractor weights on it. I've built a thing under it with 4 drawers in it, so I've got all kinds of weight on it to hold it still. I noticed that our club has a wooden floor too, and the floor moves as much as anything, so it's almost impossible to hold one still on a wooden floor. Still the same basic cut. Push it into the corner. That is a draw cut, just the opposite. You're same thing, you're on the opposite point, just pulling it back. Tends to give me a good even finish. You can go the opposite way with it if you want. You can come in from the end. Walks out a lot easier, that's why I prefer to go the other way. One thing I did forget to mention, start with a bigger block of wood is better. You obviously don't want the pith of the wood in the end. That off a little, sorry.
Okay.
So the bigger block of wood, I like about a 20-inch block of wood to turn a 16 to 18-inch hat. You want a 20-inch to start with. Gives you plenty of wood to work with. A lot heavier to load up on the lathe, but it's always easier when you're doing a finish cut, when you're doing that final cut. I like to have the rest, what I call going downhill, going from wide to thin. It makes it follow it much easier. close to the shape I want. See if we can get our little guy. You might note I like to put my tongue in the left side of my mouth for left-handed cut. Works out that way. Sometimes I get mad and stick it out at it. Not completely true on the end, so I'm just going to touch the end of it, get it trued up a little bit. So once you start really getting thin out here, you want to obviously get it thin on the end and work your way in. That end's going to start moving on you. When you go that thin, it's going to start moving pretty quick. So start at the end. Don't go thin all the way down through there and then try to come back and keep getting some more off of it. Try to work at the end, get it thin. I turn a lot of lampshades, full size, like, you know, yay. And same with them. They're turned in grain, and you gotta finish that first inch or two. Finish the next inch or two. You got to work your way down because that lampshade will move like crazy. Same with the hat band. When I get down close, I'll roll that tool it's almost like a scraper. You can see these cuts that I'm doing now, coming in almost like a scraper. You got a camera anywhere closer there? Can you see that? And you can push or pull with that tool, it'll go either way. And that's a cut you almost have to learn to do. Works great inside bowls and everything else. Something you play with on something really small to start with. Trying to chip away a little on the edge here. Right at that end grain, right at the grain there, I'm going to chip a little bit. You get a piece like that, you can even take, a lot of people like to use those 60 and 80 grit gouges, what we call sandpaper. You can touch it with that. I'll see if I didn't bring any of that. I like to start, I like my finish to be good enough that I can start with at least a 125. You know,
There's your lease on the 20 right there.
oh, yeah. It's a good pile there, isn't it? Let's see if we can get this. We're getting pretty good there. People who like to do the light show, you can see the light coming through it.
Yep.
I'm not big on turning with the light because you have a lot of dark woods, you know, a mix of dark and light. The light doesn't shine through the dark part of it. You see a flash of it coming by, but I tend to turn with thickness gauges more so. A lot by eye. These are all designed originally that I know of by Fred Williamson. And they're quick and easy. You can set up your numbers on the end here, your different marks to where you want it to end up. And I've got one really thin mark right down there that I try to do the cowboy hats, and we're on the thin side of that, so we're pretty good there. I do a lot of deep stuff too, vases and everything else, even 14-inch stuff that's real deep. So I've had to design all kinds of different tools of that nature. This one I had to stop in the middle of a job and make it. It was probably one of those vases or something, but I didn't have anything that would reach down in there to measure it, so I had to stop and make one real quick so I could measure it. This is really good for measuring the bottom end of stuff. You can go in a bowl and go all the way to the bottom and measure the bottom end of it. So make them all different ways to do measurements. This is another simple one to measure inside. You just put it in there, you stuff it down to the end of it. Then you can set it out here, line it up by eyeball, or put a tape on it, or whatever you want. Quick and simple. This is another one I use quite a bit too. This will give you measurements. Whatever way you want to do, I can get a total hat measurement there like that. Put a quick tape measure on it, and you can measure inside and see what the difference is. I don't use any of the wooden gauges the metal ones, because the metal scratches the wood and you end up with little grooves, and then you got to sand them out. So no sense making stuff harder for yourself. Notice that's left-handed. I've learned to do it both ways, just for necessity. If you taught yourself to do it right-handed, you can teach yourself to do it left-handed. While I'm turning this, I'm looking straight over top. You can see your thickness pretty easily that way. I'll still stop and measure.
You're listening for sound also, aren't you?
Yeah, you can definitely hear the change in the tune of the wood. Sound, light. According to the light, we're a little thick right there. You can see that one little spot in there.
Yeah.
And if you're turning lampshades, they need to be at least this thin. And some of the neatest ones I've turned lampshades full of ant holes. You turn those on at night, you've got spots all over your walls. It's really cool. It's like having the stars in your house. Yeah, so we'll see if we can get that thick spot out of there before it moves too much. You can see it's starting to move. It's starting to wobble a bit. getting pretty good. That's something that you can probably safer to touch with sandpaper than to continue because it's starting to move on me a little bit. So we'll get rid of some more waste. Once you start getting down to your rim here, you can decide whether to leave a little collar there. You know, if you're going to burn it in, you can leave a little collar there. Obviously, the problem with leaving a thicker collar there is when you're trying to move it, it's not going to want to move as good. So if you turn it thin all the way through, it's going to move better. Consistency is real important. You want it consistently the same thickness. You know, if you leave it thicker, that's fine, but you want to keep it consistent. I'll take a piece of rough sandpaper and touch that one. There we go. He's a man. I'll do this for all you with the allergic reactions. Try not to stir up too much dust here. This wood's a little bit older than I like to use. Well, you got a mess back here, Peter. You're supposed to keep your shops kind of clean, aren't you? There's something about cleanliness and safety now. I'm getting about that far off with this little half 3/8 gouge, which is about as far as it wants to go. I like a little taper to the top too. I've turned a couple that were pretty small at the top and tapered down quickly. They look pretty neat. You can taper it for a little bit and then bring it out quicker. All kinds of things you can do with them. You can go in the cowboy hat store and look at them and decide which way you want it. I demoed this at Central Virginia years ago and never saw one come in for show and tell, so I'm hoping we'll get a little better response over this way. Maybe somebody will give it a try. I'm going to go inside now and make sure I get my inside started the way I want it before I finish the outside, because I can get a better measurement on the inside, and then you can come back and finish the outside. There again, you just want to start the first inch or two, come back outside and go with it before it moves on you.
What kind of wood did you say that is, Kurt?
This is ash.
Ash.
And actually, those were the first time I've tried ash. I've done walnut. You know, walnut doesn't want to bend real well. It's a
It's
little.
got some nice grain to it.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Well, it was an old tree, and one of the limbs fell off and landed on somebody, and UVA decided it was time to get rid of this thing. So Fred called me up one day. The guy from Crozet had taken it down and had it just laying. The logs were laying up there in Crozet. He said they were going to be firewood. It's like, I'll come get a little.
Kirk, what do you normally sell your hats for when you sell them?
I've sold them for, it depends on how they come out real often. A good hat that, if you're making it to fit somebody, you're probably going to be between $500 and $600 if you want to get anything out of your time. It's I've done so much you're going to be slow turning the first few. It takes a while, and by the time sanding and finishing and stuff like that, you're going to put some hours into it. The turning is the fastest part of it. I can turn half as fast as I can sand. I've gotten to the point where I do chest sets in about 18 hours.
Wow.
And the Monticello ones, I think they sell for $2,800 or something like that. Just because it's repetition. But boy, I get tired of turning palms. Over and over and over and over, and they're just not too exciting. But that's part of it. But I'll turn, for a chest set, I'll turn an extra 3 or 4 palms usually just to match them up, make sure they hit good. I don't use any, it's all by hand. I don't use any machinery to make them all the same. So, and one of the chess sets is in the World Chess Hall of Fame in Missouri, which I was pretty impressed with that.
Yeah.
They bought that, and then they called me up. They had somebody that wanted to do stuff from Robert E. Lee's home too, Stratford Hall. And I had a chess set from there, and they called me up right after they bought the one and said, we got a collector that wants the one from Stratford Hall. I'm starting to like these guys. So you all know you want the edge of your blade to come dead in the center, and that changes obviously with different size tools, so sometimes you have to tweak the rest a little bit. I like to leave the tail stock on as long as you can, just a safety thing. And you can drill the middle out if you prefer. A lot of people hate to turn down to that middle nub, so you can drill it if you will. I think we're a little small there.
When you do the measurement for the head, if the head's 6 by 7, what kind of hole are you creating that you're going to squish?
Well, I say 6 by 7, you'd end up with a 6.5 is your in between the two, and then you want to add a little bit because all wood's going to shrink as it dries. So if you're at 6.5, you might want to go 6 3/4.
Okay.
And then as it shrinks and you shape it and stuff like that, you come in pretty close.
But you're squishing it this way and it's
Yeah.
elongating.
Well,
so-
yeah, most
so-
people's heads are longer this way than
Right.
they are this way, you know. So yeah, as you squeeze it, and I didn't mention, but you obviously want to go with the grain.
Yeah,
So you want to roll these edges. You want to roll it here and here. You don't want to try to roll on these, or it's way more likely to crack. It naturally wants to roll here, and I mean you can see the flex in there.
yeah,
It's got pretty good flex there.
right.
And I say I've dropped that one so many times it's bounced across the floor over and over, and I've yet to break it. I probably will before it's over with.
Looks like it.
But now we need a
Inches.
measuring tool that'll actually come in around that rim and tell us what we have. And we get pretty thin right in the corner there. That's about as wide as we're going there. I'm not playing with the measuring so much this time because it just takes you more time and you don't really have to do that. Let's take up stock in it.
Oh,
Get that out of the way. I never leave these in my lay. Because I pull that on and off about 100 times.
we got a one-way,
I've got the Powermatic.
that's too bad. I mean,
It's all I could afford at the time. I don't have Stark's money.
Or Charlie.
But he is the guy that has your anchor seal with Stark.
Yes. Oh, Stark has it.
Stark has it.
All right, I didn't know. They had emailed me that Don had it.
Yeah, and I mean, they originally told me Don was going to buy it. And Stark ended up doing it.
Yeah.
Actually, he just took it. He didn't buy it. He took it. But
I wanted to send him a check, so.
yeah, you got to pay Stark now and do all that stuff. They've gotten into this, you know, they're worried about the consequences of selling outside the club and having to deal with taxes and all this kind of
I
stuff.
understand.
So
yeah,
government regulation just drives us crazy. It was so easy when we were about 8 or 10 people and
Yeah.
just met and had a good time.
Well, we still do. Even though we got more.
You there? So if you stick that corner in there just right, it'll just bore that wood right out of there. Or you can come in from the back side. See, it's a little brittle there. Breaks off rather than cuts off.
yeah.
According to our light, we're still a little thick there. If we trust our light.
See through it.
Not much. You see, here's where we run into a problem too. See, we got dark wood
Yeah,
all the way around here, so that
Yeah.
changes. The only place we have that the light will shine through good is right up to about there.
yeah.
So you see people do lampshades. They do the light doing lampshades too, and it's fine if you've got a piece of wood that's this color all the way through. That's no problem. But when you have the darkened lights and all that, yeah, you can get yourself in trouble. And I'm gonna, before I get too deep here, I'm gonna show you my homemade boring bars I use. They're a little thick there, so I'm just going to go a little thin there. Get your first inch going. It's still a little sharper corner than I would prefer. I'd love to have a little more round there, but I didn't hit it this time. So, but I think a little more roll over here will give you an easier fit when you're trying to fit it on your head. Let's do a quick little play with bars. Show you. These are what I designed. Fred had one. He started with round pipe and would flatten the bottom side of it. And he used a bolt through there and actually put the little bit through a bolt inside it. This is the design I came up with because it's way more versatile. So mine is simply, it's drilled and threaded. It just holds it in there with pressure. If you get a catch, it'll just move that bit a little bit, which is a good thing sometimes, rather than keep digging in. But if you move the bit in here, you're really going at it too hard because it's hard to move that bit, and it's simply just snug down in there. So this is an 1.5 inches by 3/4 piece of steel, just steel you can buy anywhere. You cut the end out. You don't want to go too deep on the end because you'll get too much flex in your ears here. Just drilled and tapped. The bits you can buy cheap. I mean, they're $2 or $3. You buy them, they're about that long. You shape them the way you want them. I go with a pretty sharp point on it, and it's touched on the edges. I basically just take it up to by hand, just sharpen it by hand. And these are what I use to do all my deep pieces with, vases and lampshades and everything like that. I can go in and do the whole thing with something like this with a bowl gouge. I don't like sticking my arm 8 or 10 inches up inside something cutting with it, you know. So I've gone to this and it really works good. Fred's actually gone to this diameter and stuff too now. I've got one even bigger and longer than this, and one of our guys in our wood group, who's over this way somewhere, our chicken farmer, he's got one that I can barely lift. The thing is massive piece of steel. I took it to the Virginia Symposium just to show it off. I don't know if I could pick it up and do it. Fred uses a piece of wood back here to hold it up.
Yeah.
I just tuck it under my arm, and it works really well. It's not a problem keeping it straight. What I like about this design over the bolt one he has is I can do all kinds of different ends in it. So this is a big old scraper. There you go. That's a scraper blade that came in another tool.
Yeah.
It's just pinched between there is all it is. I can move the scraper around or whatever if I want a long flat surface or pointed. It's amazing what I can do with this scraper. And one of the things that everybody's always learned is actually these, due to the thickness of the bar, you've got to drop down a little bit more. But you can see how quickly I can just haul it. That's just a scraper blade. I'm pretty safe with this too. Normally when I'm working out here with this, I'll take my face shield off because all your flying debris is going this way. So it's pretty safe when you get back this far doing it, but we'll do it the same way. So, you know how scary it is if you go across center with a tool. Well, there we are. I'm rubbing across center. I'm an inch out past center. Doesn't move.
Yeah.
Safest tool you can have for doing the inside of stuff. And I could turn the whole inside of the bowl with this, or a hat, or whatever. The bit one gives you a little more it's smaller. You can put it in different places. The easy hollower tools. I'm sure most of you have seen the easy hollowers. You know, they come with the round bit or the square bit, and you just shove that thing in there. I've got a piece I can put an easy hollower bit right on the end of here. I can take this bit, I can switch it around, I can turn the back side of something. If I need to come in, if I'm turning a real sharp edge bowl like the square ones you do that roll over, somebody's got a little bit of rollover in one of them there. If you want to roll over one of those bowls, I can turn this thing out and come back here and go way back up under something. No problem. Real easy. There's so much beef to this that it just doesn't move around much on you. It's just real easy to control. I'd have to work very hard to get a catch with it. Get that metal right, we can drill right on down. That's about a 1/2 inch hole in there. You can just drill with it. So you can see that you can just go at it and just haul wood out of there. It leaves it a little feathered there because I'm coming back at the grain. Finish it that way and it cleans up a lot better, and then you can take your scraper or whatever you want to do to clean it up even better. Just wanted to show you that. I've gotten spoiled with them though. I mean, I don't hardly, any of my larger bowls, natural edge and things like that, you get to a 12, 16, 18 inch bowl, I pull that out every time. I'll get the outside done and I'm going to
I
that
have
big
one of
bowl.
Denny Martin's tools like that.
Yeah, Denny makes them. I've actually
have
got
Two tool rests, and resting across both tool rests makes it really stable.
And I've got one of the roller bar pieces for the back end. If I get 14, 15 inches deep into something, I'll put that on sometimes. That's why I had to get a longer rod to be able to fit all that in there. They're easy up to about 12 inches. You're pretty good. Once you get past that, it's starting to get, you got to be careful. So that's why I put the roller bar thing back there, but I seldom use it. Alright, let's get back on our outside, get it where we want it. On the back of my cabinet I have under here, I've got plastic slots for all these tools. They're sitting right here. Just pull it out of my holster and I'm ready to roll. A little bit of pink in the top end of this thing.
It's got a natural hat band on it.
Yeah, it's got some pretty good color in there, so you wouldn't have to do a hat band. I'm going to get a quick finish cut right here next to the side edge. For my bowl gouges, my finger in there is just the right height. So I've gotten used to putting that at the right height for my bowl gouges just by I stick my finger in there, tighten it down, and I'm good enough. A little bit. Wasn't that good? I cut it off before I moved it to the rest of it. Where the Ford camera guy?
Sorry.
Two-sided bits. I don't have to stop and sharpen. I even brought a couple extra with me. When we're doing the finish cut, obviously the back end of the tool drops down. Get more of a slicing cut out of it. We're going to go to a little smaller tool rest so we can get it.
Why didn't you go all the way inside down to the bottom before coming back on the outside?
You could do it either way, probably, but I like the shape. I can see the outside better. You know, I'm bringing it down to a narrower top,
Yeah.
and I can see it from the outside easier than I can see my shape from the inside.
Yeah.
So I do that, and then, I mean, it's like finishing a bowl. You normally finish the outside, and then you finish the inside. You could do it either way. You know, it's just personal preference for me. You're welcome to do it either way. I say a lot of people mount the whole hat the opposite way and turn a tailstock piece and turn the outside and then flip it over and turn, you know, so there's 5 ways to everything you do.
You mentioned going in steps so that because of the wood movement as well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, mostly with the brim. Once you get inside here, you know, it's not going to move too fast unless you cut it off and go away for a half a day and try to come back. Then you're going to have an issue. You're going to have to retrue the outside and come back to the inside, just like with the bowl. This is a little bit smaller than I normally do, but it makes it real nice tail blocks.
Work out there.
If you get up to the 18 and 20 inch hats, then you've got to take it loose and leave tailstock and back. So. So I think I'll just put these away and break up the big bars again. I'll get out of there. We okay time wise? Y'all take breaks?
You're great. Okay. You're doing
Good. For this, you don't want it resting too close. You get thicker back here, so you can set this thing back, no problem. I mean, you can be 4 or 5 inches away, and it's no problem at all. Not like a whole thing. Like all Halloween, you gotta stop and clean this stuff out. You can stick the bit in and draw it back to clean it out. It's not quite as safe that way. A lot of people do it, me included. Stop and measure, the more the better.
getting there?
A little thick still. It's about a 3:30 seconds mark.
Oh, we do elevators.
Way too thick. One more cut, right? Boom.
Just a little more.
Believe me, I've done that as a demo before. You definitely want to sneak up on it though when you start getting that way. Doesn't look like I took anything. And I can easily change the position of this bit too. I can point it straight out, I can do whatever with it. I've got some that are different lengths too. When they come new, they're a little too long. The back end will get in your way if you're doing hollow globes and stuff and you've only got, you know, a small hole in the top. You don't want that back end hanging out. I do a lot of globe work too with holes through them and all that kind of stuff. I love having holes through them because then you don't have to stop and clean out everything all the time. It just starts flying.
Is that what you use for all of your hollowing vases and stuff like that? You don't use a
Yep. This is what I use.
Jameson system or anything like that?
No. And I mean, we're talking, you know, you might have, if you build these yourself, you might have $35 in it, something like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
What are those systems cost? 4, 5, 600? Being a mechanic all my life, I built tools and stuff, you know, for the shop and things like that. So it was just kind of natural for me to start doing it with this stuff too.
Where'd you get that bar stuff?
Just a welding shop in Charlottesville. You know, you go in there and buy it at whatever length you want. They'll sell you 8 feet or whatever you want. Any place that carries metal. Lowe's would be the most expensive place you could go.
Most any machine shop would have it.
Yeah, basically anybody who does a lot of welding machining. You see any light coming through there yet?
A
little bit, but you know the problem, like I say, here is we've got a lot of dark wood, so we're only going to get light through these.
I can see on this side. I can see the light
See
here.
that little white patch is going to show through a little bit, so that's why
Yep.
going with lights isn't. And different woods will glow different colors too. You know, you get that nice red color. When you start getting to the white color, you need to put a little wood back on. On a little too far. And you'll hear it too. Once you hear, you know that sound. Too thin. That's just too thick.
So you're aiming for the same thickness throughout.
Yeah, you'd like to keep the same thickness all the way through. The rim thickness right on down
Yeah.
to the inside. That way everything wants to move good. The rim's real thin. Nice and thin on the rim. We fatten up as soon as we get to the curve. I'm about twice as thick here as I am here. And you gotta be careful with this tool because it'll take 1/8 of an inch at a time off the thing, you know. And at this point,
Yeah.
I don't have 1/8 of an inch to take.
What's your target thickness?
Oh, a 32nd of an inch would be real good. No, that's a little too thin probably. A 16th is great. Gives you a lot of flex. Like I say, when you get that thin, it just flexes for you and it doesn't, it's no problem. This, you put rubber bands on it, it would start moving immediately. I mean, you'd be able to pull it down some right off the bat. Nice little shavings.
Yeah.
Nice little scraper blade. But it does clog up easily. Not taking much off. I'm going really slow. You need to go really slow at this point. A little bit and measure, a little bit and measure. Once you've turned all this stuff, you don't want to blow it up in the last inch. I mean, that just really wears you out. Good for a long day. Tell it's getting thin because it's starting.
When it starts chattering, that's when it can
Starting to talk to us now. So
can
we know
fall
we're
apart too. Blow apart.
Don't talk like that. No negative thoughts, please.
You ever put tape around the outside or anything when you're?
When I'm doing globes with a lot of holes and stuff in them, yeah, I tape those up real
Okay.
often. And you can do the same thing with a cowboy hat. I mean, you can do it. I've done them with bark on the tips. And one of those has a little on the tips. You can do bark on the tips.
Yeah.
You got to be real careful when you're trying to bend it, obviously. Put a little glue on there and stuff. You can do one with holes through it and stuff, but you know, you're obviously taking a lot more chance with it coming apart on you, like the hole in the hat here. That's obviously, that dark spot is a weak spot. So you'd want to saturate that with a little glue too. Before it's too late.
You better quit before it gets.
One more. Come on, one more. Come on. I just got to do it. anybody's getting bored, they can come finish this up for me. Now also when we get to the top, I don't necessarily want to hollow all the way to where I'm going to cut it off. If you notice the top on that one, I've dropped it back in a little bit. So you could do that, or you could leave a little up there and do some carving on it or whatever you want. When they do the baseball hats, you've probably seen them where they leave them a little thick and they'll carve in somebody's name or whatever in there. I did one of those for a real good friend, but that's a lot of work. But yeah, so there's all kinds of things you can do with them. And this is nothing but something to keep your popcorn in. I mean, you just set it on the table and put your popcorn in.
Kurt, I want you to know how famous you are. We have a visitor from Michigan that came all the way down to see your demo.
That's almost as far as I drove.
Yeah, but first I was in Florida.
Ah, wow. Why'd you come back up here? It's so warm down there, isn't it?
90s.
So I know I've got a lot left, but I'll just show you real quick with the
Yeah.
depth gauge. So you just push that on there like that. You set it back there like that. You can see I've got an inch or so to go there.
Yeah.
I think I'm a little fat when I get down towards that line. So you want a finished product? You don't want me to go any thinner?
No, that's good enough.
Definitely not lampshade material yet. I did make a lampshade out of one of these too.
Well, now the sanding would take a little off, right?
Yeah. Sand is going to take a little off, and that depends on whether you start with 40 grit, like some people do, or whether you start with a 125 or something like that. You start with a 125, you're not taking a lot of wood off.
Yeah.
Very little. I mean, if you sat there and tried to thin that down with a 125, you'd be there for a long time.
Yeah.
You could turn the whole bowl with sandpaper, I guess, if you wanted to. But I did do I carved a cowboy boot and then put a cowboy hat lampshade on top of it.
Yeah.
I was famous before I got here, though, Peter.
I just didn't realize.
I was in the
how
movies.
you
You
were
know,
famous.
John Grisham built a ballpark down below Charlottesville, which is real close to my house. And I used to coach baseball, little league stuff. And of course, John did too when his son was there. So you know, I'd be out raking the ball fields with John in the morning and stuff. Well, he decided that one of his books he turned into a movie, and he himself and one other guy fronted all the money and did this movie, and we shot it at Cove Creek, and Petersburg and some, different spots and stuff. But I was an assistant coach in the movie. But it was a cool experience, just seeing everything you got to go through. I mean, they do the same shot over and over. And, you spend all day making about a minute and a half a movie because they do it over and over and over. And I mean, they've got 2-3 girls that are watching to make sure everybody's sitting in the same spot again. So ever since doing that movie, every movie I see glitches. They missed that. They missed that. That guy was not doing that, or he's wearing something different or whatever. I catch all that now. It just ruined movies for me. But anyway, he did this movie, and it happened to come out right about the same time they had that 13-year-old kid trying to play in the 12-year-old league. They caught him in the World Series.
Yeah.
Shot his movie all to hell. They didn't want the publicity out, or nothing. So he just gave up on that movie.
But you can afford it.
Well, yeah, he can.
Yeah, but still, nobody wants to do that.
He owns most of southern Albemarle County now. He just keeps buying farms up anywhere close by. Real nice guy, though. I mean, he was just the nicest guy you can meet. He loved being out at the ballpark, working, raking the fields out and stuff like that. But he just loved it because people weren't asking for his autograph and stuff. We all knew him.
But did you teach him to turn? That's the question.
No, they did want me to do a bowl for him, though. They're hitting their, I forgot, 20-year anniversary or something like that. My kids played there, and the first, I guess my youngest son started in the T-ball stuff when they first opened. My older son played there too, but he didn't get. But my younger son, he was just a bull. I mean, he would swing a bat, T-ball. He could swing a bat like that, just strong as an ox. I don't know where he got that from, but I tell his coach first thing. I said, "You want to step those people back, because girls are out there and guys are, they're looking backwards and just piddling, picking clovers and stuff at that age." I said, "You might want to wake those kids up." I mean, he was driving the ball to the fence in T-ball, and I was like, "Oh, he's gonna hurt somebody." It's on their insurance, I hope. All right, so let's see. We got to get. We're getting there. Do a nice cup in that top and stuff. So I think we're getting pretty close. We'll see what our finish looks like. It's not too bad either. We'll touch it.
At some point, switch back off to a bowl down, finish off the inside.
No. Just do it
All
with
due
my
respect.
finish guy over here. It'd be real hard to do with a bowl gas because you have that sharp bottom. You'd have to stuff a scraper in there or something. So now we got to turn it around so we can finish it off. See, you finally made it, Don. Did we wake you up?
Finally woke up.
We didn't get you up too early, did we?
No.
So we're getting pretty light. I mean, you can feel that end's nice and light. All the weight's down here on my hub. The camera went. Get some light in here. The finish is pretty good.
Nice.
It would take a little sanding to smooth it up, but it's pretty good.
And you would sand it now before you.
Real often I do not.
Oh, you don't?
Because I don't want to dry it out any more than possible. So, if you're going to take these things, like I say, you can steam them and things like that. You could sand it and stick it in a vat of water. Just sink it underwater for a day or so and then pull it back out and bend it. I've got the Fordham system set up, with a little hand held, and I can sit down, it's foot control, and I can sit down and it's pretty easy to sand and stuff like that. So I'll do it that way real often. Turn it good enough, you wouldn't have to sand. So now we gotta reverse this guy. And I'm sure Stark's been around, y'all all have seen these things. I just use them up inside. And I've got these in all different sizes, all the way up to the big ones. You could put a flat one right up against it. I've got them that long, so I can do the bottom of a vase or whatever. I don't have a vacuum system. Don't make all that noise. A vacuum to hold the bowl on, I'm saying. I do have a vacuum system. Just built a new shop last summer, so pretty exciting to get in there and have room to do stuff. Yeah, you can do that with a wrench or screwdriver or whatever if you prefer. I tend to turn 15, 20 bowls in a day. Anything to speed it up.
My one way doesn't have that little screw there.
Heavier tailstock too.
So you have to be careful not to push it off.
Well, I never had mine on the lathe, so.
No,
In fact, I'm not even sure where they are. Probably in a toolbox. Yeah, we got to go through all that rigmarole of finding the center.
Yeah, you really have to work hard.
You're doing enough of them.
You're on the roll today.
I do that a lot, so it gets to be like everything, repetition. It's actually off a little bit, but
Now it's on.
now it's off. But I messed it up real good now. Perfect.
yeah.
So what you do when you're off a little like this is you stick a little piece of chalk there. That tells you your high spot. And you move it towards your high spot. But it just takes a little tick when you're that close. Then you make it worse 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, it's just
But when you're trying to come back in and turn an edge inside that, you want it pretty close or you're going to end up with a fat and a thin.
yeah.
Look, now I really got to go with that. Should we go with that? My first shot was the best shot, wasn't it?
It's
good.
We're gonna live with that.
That's what is it gonna get? You're gonna make one of those next time, sure.
Close enough for government work.
Play with it, but you need green wood. Poplar would probably be good.
I don't know.
This is where you can stop and turn a spinning top or whatever you want on that top piece. I'll do that really often. Hate to waste wood. One of the lamps I did the other day, I cored bowls out. You know, you do it in grain as a big piece, and I cored bowls out of the bottom of it. And when I was finishing the lamp up inside, I left it a big funnel shape in the bottom of it. So I took that off and remounted it and turned bowls out of that too. So it's just all kinds of pieces of it. I wonder our meeting so good. You're asking yourself, how do I know how thin I'm getting? I have no clue.
That's what I was thinking.
So here's where you stop and you take it off and you check.
Yeah.
And then you got to recenter it again.
Yeah.
So if you had a vacuum chuck, it would make life a little easier.
A lot easier similar small mill than it is the big one.
Ooh,
We're there.
man, I'm good.
Close?
One more cut?
How ooh was it?
Hmm?
How ooh was it?
It's perfect. Exactly the way I planned it.
Cool.
Calibrated eyeball, huh?
And we're not really perfectly true here, but we'll end up finishing that top up with some sandpaper, obviously. I'll actually, most of the stuff I do, I'll take my cut-off tool and I'll actually cut it off.
Yeah.
A bowl and things like that, you can cut it off and it stays right there. It doesn't run anywhere. I've got a pretty tall stem here and an edge sitting here, so it might be a little exciting, but we can do it. My cut-off tool, I'm all about bigger, you know. The handle on it just wasn't big enough. They give you these cut-off tools with a handle this big, you know, and that thing gets grabbing and jumping and things. You just need more handle. Everything. I'm not an ink pen turner. I've done them, but man, that is boring. Sorry for you ink pen turners. Nothing personal. So is turning 500 bottle stoppers. So. Close enough. We can sand that little nub off.
Oh,
It fell off. I was going to leave that on there for looks. Well, I knew it wouldn't work out. So, there it is. I didn't hit the size real good.
Pretty darn good.
now you put that immediately into your jig and start to
Yeah.
save it.
I'll probably put it in there for the
Pretty
dry.
darn good.